Most people think that walking every day is enough to stay strong as they get older. But what I see all the time as a home care physical therapist is that people who only walk end up falling and breaking hips or struggling with everyday tasks like getting off a toilet or up from a chair. And if you can't get off the toilet, you can't live on your own. So in this video, I'll show you what walking misses and how even the smallest amount of strength training will change your life for the better. Let me start by saying that walking is always better than sitting on the couch. I walk at least 12,000 steps every single day, so please don't think I'm not a huge fan of walking. But if walking is the only thing you're doing for exercise as you get older, you will run into problems. Step trackers, Apple Watches, and even doctors have all made step counts super popular to the point that people think that's all they need. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Let's first touch on what walking does do well for you. Walking really has so many benefits. First and foremost, your heart health. We know that people who move more live longer. And in today's society, everybody sits too much on the way to work, at night in their recliner, on the couch. Today's world has just become a seated world filled with technology. I try to stand and walk as much as I can. I encourage all my patients and clients to do the same. So always try to walk more. Walking is also great for your mood because who doesn't feel better when they get outside, get some sunlight, and get moving and get the blood flowing? It's always going to be better than sitting around. It's great for digestion. So much research shows walking after eating can be helpful. And walking is amazing for weight loss. Anytime you're on a diet or trying to lose weight, you should be trying to increase your steps because it's an easy, simple way to burn more calories, and it's not going to make it hurt you. It's not going to make you sore. It's not going to require a bunch of time to recover from like lifting weights or a hard workout will be. So always, if any of those things are your goals, make sure that you are walking as much as you can. But even with all those benefits, walking alone will leave you vulnerable to falls and weakness, which is why you need to make sure you're including some strength training, which we will get into later. And especially if you're retired and have the time, make sure that strength training is something you're doing and you don't just have the mindset that I walk, I do my 10,000 steps, and I'm good. There are a number of arguments I hear from people as to why they only walk or why they think that only walking is enough. The first one I get all the time in person and on social media is something along the lines of, well, my grandmother lived to 95 or my grandmother lived to 102 and all she did was walk. So there's a few problems with that. First, most grandmothers are not living to that age. So your grandmother, if you go by that argument, is probably one of the lucky ones, to be honest. And number two, our grandmothers were a lot more active than we were. They were dealing with a bunch of kids running around. They were doing yard work. They were cooking. They were walking to the grocery store. They weren't working sedentary jobs. They weren't sitting at home on Netflix and social media all night. All these things have changed how we move and how our bodies kind of have adapted over time. I know it's not that long, but 50 years ago, we were doing a lot more activity, and that was really just enough of a baseline, I think, to keep you stronger and fitter for longer versus today when we just sit around so much. The second thing I always hear is that I'm active enough and I stay active by walking. And that's great, but active doesn't always mean strong. And if you're just active, it doesn't mean that you're fall proofing yourself. I see so many patients every week who tell me how shocked they are that they fell because they say how much they were walking before and how active they were with gardening and yard work and doing stuff around the house. And all that stuff is great and it keeps us moving, but it just doesn't build the strength or reactive ability we need to stop a fall. Another argument I get a lot is, I don't want to go to the gym, or I don't have time to go to the gym, or I don't want to lift weights. Anything along those lines, it's totally understandable. A lot of people are worried about the gym, don't know what to do there. It's a big time suck. But I always encourage people, start at home. All you need is 5 to 10 minutes, a few days per week, which we'll get into some of the exercises that you can do. don't think that you need the gym or have that be your excuse as to why you're not going to do any strength training. And the last excuse that I hear a lot as to why people stick to just walking and avoid strength training is they say, well, I feel fine. I haven't fallen yet. And the problem with that is that falls are accidents, just like car accidents. No one really wakes up and says, today's the day that I'm going to fall and I'm going to break my hip. It just doesn't work that way. It's kind of like driving and wearing a seatbelt. You don't just say, I'm not going to wear my seatbelt because I haven't been in a car accident yet. We know that the safe thing to do is to wear a seatbelt, and it should go that same way with falls. There's 14 million older adults that fall every year. That's actually more than the total number of car accidents in this country every year, which makes this analogy even crazier because people don't even think about preventing falls when it happens more frequently and is as injurious as car accidents are. So if you're wearing a seatbelt and you don't strength train, think about including some strength training in your weekly daily life. Another problem that we run into is that doctors tell us just to walk. And when you go to the doctor, you generally believe everything they say and you hope that they have your best interests in mind. But there's a couple problems here. Number one, they just don't have enough time with you to go through what you should really be doing. Number two, a lot of them aren't exactly educated as far as rehab, strength and conditioning, longevity, things like this. They manage disease. They don't worry about your ability to get off a toilet or get out of a chair or not fall, right? They're more worried about medications, making referrals as needed, and keeping you healthy medically, and not necessarily about the what might happen if you get weak or if you fall or if you don't manage your body properly as you get older. So, don't necessarily take everything they say in regards to exercise as to what you should do. And even when they tell you to just stay active, a lot of people take that as, oh, they told me to stay active. Well, I'll just make sure I get enough walking in because, your doctor's not exactly telling you, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to lift weights, you need to do X amount of cardio. And also, I see patients all the time after back surgeries and hip surgeries where their orthopedic surgeon is telling them just to walk. And if we think about that for a second, maybe that makes sense in the early going where we want to protect the area and be extra cautious. But in the long run, if you don't strengthen all the muscles around whatever that joint is you just had surgery on, you're only going to run into more problems, right? Think about just something like getting out of a chair. If your legs aren't strong, you're going to dip your trunk forward, and that's going to put more stress on your back. And when you think about someone who had a back surgery, doesn't have strong legs, and then they're told by their doctor that they shouldn't be strength training and all they should do is walk, well, they're not going to get stronger over time doing something as simple as getting out of a chair. And when you add up tens of thousands of reps over the next years to decades, that's just putting more and more stress on that area that's already had, a surgical repair. So I just want you to think carefully. If your doctor's told you to just walk or, just stay active, think about where they're coming from with that and if they really have the time and energy and education to tell you exactly what you need to be doing. That's not their specialty. Just like I don't prescribe medications for my patients, they probably don't have the best advice when it comes to exercise. So now that we've talked about the benefits of walking and the arguments why people think walking might be all they need, let's discuss what walking doesn't do for you. And, this is the big thing here. First and foremost, walking doesn't strengthen your quad muscles. And your quad muscles are so important as you get older to prevent falls, get out of chairs, get off the ground, climb stairs. Everything you do in life, most of it comes down to having strong quads. Think of it this way. When someone's walking, they are barely bending their knees. And to strengthen a muscle, we need to, number one, bend a joint that lengthens and shortens that muscle that's connected to it. And number two, have some resistance. And for our quad muscles to get stronger, our knees generally need to bend against resistance. And strength training doesn't do that. Think about if you're in the gym and doing a bicep curl, something like this. Well, we know that to work the bicep, we have to bend the arm the whole way. We can't just do a little bit. But this is what walking is doing. If this is your knee, this is how much it bends for walking. Versus if we do something like a squat, we bend it this much. So I hope that makes sense. A lot of people just say, oh, I go for a walk, so it's working my legs. But in reality, there's not enough range of motion or stress on your quad muscles to make them stronger. Number two, walking doesn't do anything for your reactive balance. And we all trip at some point, especially as we get older. We trip and our reactive time ability is a little bit slower or a lot slower, depending on when the last time you moved quickly was. Walking just at a regular pace on regular terrain does not improve your ability to react when you trip. So, improving your reaction time is something that's so key to preventing falls as you get older. I do have videos if you want to check it out as far as reactive balance drills that I use with my patients and clients. And number three, probably the least important on this list, is walking doesn't really get your heart rate up much, so it's not improving your cardiac abilities. We know that to improve the function of our heart, we need to get our heart rate up to some degree and either hold a heightened heart rate for shorter periods of time or hold a slightly increased heart rate for longer periods of time. So unless you're walking with a heavy pack on or walking up a hill, walking is not necessarily going to improve your heart's function. So you're probably wondering, all right, well, what can you do in a minimal amount of time that's going to give you a big bang for your buck in addition to walking? Assuming that you don't want to go to the gym and start spending hours every week, here are the three things that I would recommend you start with. Number one, sit to stands. You're going to find a chair, sit down, stand up. Depending on your starting level, you may have a different ability here, but I would be able to work up to doing 30 in a row without using your hands to push yourself off. Once you can do 30, you can start adding weight or stagger your feet, or there's endless other ways to make this exercise harder, but you want to be doing some form of a squat, and the sit to stand checks that box off. Just do it right when you come back from your walk. If you have a daily walk scheduled, do your walk, come back, build up to doing 30 sit to stands in a row, and that's your bilateral leg strengthening. Number two, I would do stairs or step-ups on the bottom step of the staircase. So if you have stairs, that's great. You can go up and down them a few times. And then I would also do step-ups on the bottom where you put one foot on the bottom step and then bring the other foot up to it and back down. You can leave the one foot on that bottom step for the whole set, do 10 to 20, switch sides. The goal is to try and avoid pushing off with the foot on the floor too much and make the foot on the step do most of the work. Again, you can check out demos on my YouTube channel if you want to see how I do it and how I progress this exercise too. Number three, I would do reactive balance drills. These literally take under a minute, but in essence, you're doing quick stepping in various directions. So quick stepping forward, quick stepping to the side to work on your reactive ability for when you trip. Because even if we train our strength, we're not training our balance and reactive ability, and that's so important. So I would do that. So those three exercises, sit to stands, staircase or step ups, and then reactive balance drills. Again, I have YouTube videos that go in more depth on this. Of course, I would encourage you to participate in a kind of more involved program that do some more things than just these few exercises. But that's a starting point that will take you 3 to 5 minutes. And I would shoot to do that 3 times a week. And that is a huge upgrade over just walking. Let me finish by saying this. If walking was enough, I wouldn't have a day job. I wouldn't be walking into homes every single week to see patients who just came out of hospitals and rehabs after they fell and broke bones. Because over and over, these patients are shocked that they fell. They tell me how active they were with gardening and walking and housework and how many steps a day they did, but they never mention strength training. Being active doesn't mean that your body's ready to prevent a fall. And remember, you don't need a gym. You don't need heavy weights, and you really don't need endless hours every week. But you do need to do more than just walk if you want to remain independent for the long term, because walking is great, but strength training is what will keep you living life on your own terms.